Okay, I think we shall start. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this side event, to the Science Days, which are themselves contributing to the United Food System Summit. I will be, for a period of time until when I take the floor, your facilitator, moderator. I'm Alessandro Meschinelli, working at GFAR. And the title of our event, as you know, is A New Paradigm for Research and Innovation, a Practical Application with Forgotten Foods. And it's an event which is based on the freshly developed, freshly finalized manifesto on forgotten foods, which will be soon published by GFAR. It's one of the collective actions of GFAR. So today we will have more or less 1.5 hours of both presentation and discussions, and they will be organized in the following way. We'll have a brief hello from our chair, Raffaele Majorano, who will then pass the floor to our new executive secretary,
As soon as we start, I put the ear.
Hildegard Mignau, and who will introduce the event. And after that, we will start with part 1, where we will hear 2 important players, among others, that will express their views on the manifesto and on the manifesto consequences for research and innovation. And so we'll give the floor to Ravi Ketarpal from APARI, to Yemi Akinbanjo from FARA, and to Ali Al-Lawati from Arinena. After this, we will have, in part 2, the expression of farmers' points of view through Irish Bagilat, representing AFA, Asian Farmer Association. After that, Carlo Fadda from Biodiversity SIAT will present a case that calls for a transformation of research and innovation. And after this presentation, we will then have a debate, and a few persons have been pre-identified for the debate, but we will welcome as many participants as they will desire, based on the little hand signal that you know quite well. There is also a chat box that will be followed. I'll be following the most important and relevant questions, and if possible, we will try to answer to those questions either here or in a second moment. So having said that, I think we can start our event, hoping you will enjoy and appreciate it. I will start by giving the floor to Raffaele Majorano, the chair of GFAR. Please, Raffaele.
Thank you, Alessandro. Hello, everyone. A quick and warm welcome to everyone. And first of all, I wish to thank you, Alessandro, because in the last period, long period of GFAR, you have to tell you and to formally tell everyone that you have been a real pillar for GFAR, because all this forgotten food manifesto, which is a very important innovation of thought for research and farmers, would never happen if you weren't that present and that active for GFAR, with the other partners, of course, the Asia and Pacific Association, the Asian Farmer Association for Sustainable Rural Development, and the Swaminathan Research Foundation, the Bali Development Institute for Rural Women, the Alliance of Biodiversity International and SIAT, FARA, the Association of Agricultural Research Institution of Near East and North Africa, Arinena. So I wish, I really thank you, all of these partners, for improving and implementing the Forgotten Food Manifesto, which is just, it's not an arrival point, an ending point, but it's a starting point. We use the one that we call the GFAR way. So the attitude of GFAR of being this multi-stakeholder platform that links together farmers, researchers, university, private sector, NGO, and organization. And talking about organization, I must thank FAO and United Nations for giving us the chance of of hosting this side event for the Science Days organizing the UN Food System Summit. First of all, at the end, let me introduce you our new executive secretary, Mrs. Hildegard Lignau, who is just amazing. We had a chat, we had a coffee last week. I had the opportunity of meeting her during the selection panel, and already she impressed me at the time, and we had the opportunity of meeting physically, which is quite something in this period where everything happened in via web and via Zoom. We had a really pleasant coffee, and we discussed about the future of GFAR, and she is something that she's special. She has an amazing experience, and it's the best that we could have asked for GFAR for the next year to come. So I'm super excited because we had a tough period before the appointment of Hildegard. So I see the light, and this is a fresh restart. And this event is something that represents the actual fresh restart for GFAR and all our partners. So Hildegard, giving you the floor, and I'm sincerely happy that you are part of GFAR. Thank you.
So am I. Many thanks, Raffaele, to you, to colleagues in FAO, and last but certainly not least, to all our partners in this amazing network. It's a big pleasure to be with GFAR now, although we are able to meet virtually only, with a few exceptions, as Raffaele mentioned. But I'm really keen to working with you and seeing you in person as soon as possible. It's a big honor and pleasure to introduce to today's meeting, although I did not contribute to the amazing work that we are going to discuss and to take further from here. So let me mainly say two things. Big congratulations for the work achieved with this very collective action on a global manifesto on forgotten foods, and a big thanks to all of you who contributed. And as Raffaello said, Alessandro is the one who has been leading on the topic within GFAR without much leadership and in very difficult times. That's highly appreciated. I do think, from the little I know so far about work that is being done by you and in this amazing big network, I see this as a great example of how to do collective actions. By bringing, let me try to explain what I mean by saying a great example. It's bringing together a global multi-stakeholder view, not only to the Science Days that we are enjoying this week, but to the UN Food System Summit taking place later this year, by combining scientific knowledge with farmers and local knowledge. And all of this in a bottom-up instead of a top-down approach. This is something we don't see happening often. And I have some experience, as Raffaele was so kind to mention, in how development, cooperation, and international relations are working. So I'm really excited to see how you manage to do this, in this collective action on forgotten foods. We are here to advocate for a farmer-centered and farmer-led approach. And if I say farmers, I don't only think of male farmers, but we should also acknowledge female farmers, older ones and younger ones. And when Alessandro and I looked at the agenda of the day, I realized that we are not really doing well on this front, but I was told that the consultation process that led to today's event indeed included younger farmers and female farmers as well. And we do have some speakers as well. Just for you to know, we pay attention to this gender and demographic balances as well. Forgotten foods is not only an interesting topic per se, It is also crucial to achieve SDGs, the SDGs at large, but especially SDG 2, of course, and for tackling climate change challenges. And that's another topic we may want to look at when we refresh the work of the network. And I know that some of you have been discussing about this before. For this to achieve the SDGs, to tackle climate change challenges, we do not only need more research. That is an easy thing for me as a researcher to be said. We need more research devoted to local and indigenous crops. And we also need to do research differently. We should do it in a co-researching and co-innovating approach. And that is how I see the GFAR credo, and that I know, and that's why I applied for the position. That is what GFAR is known for and acknowledged for empowering farmers and rural communities, and to put them center stage of all discussions. We need to do this indeed in a very partnership approach. It's a fashionable expression, but Alessandro will take a couple of minutes later on to explain to us how we define partnerships and how we want to continue engaging in them. And he will also be so kind to tell us about the next step that will follow on the Global Manifesto that, and again, congratulations for that. You have been drafting, all of you together. So we plan to have a plan of action and some specific commitments how to bring this big achievement further in the run-up to the UN Food System Summit. I'm really impressed by the work that has been done by all of you. I congratulate you to these achievements. I look very much forward to working with you and look forward to our discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hildegard, for this highly motivating introduction, which gives us a lot of energy to start our work. So I will pass the floor to Ravi Ketarpal. And you heard me speaking without introducing anybody with professor, doctor, or other titles. It's just because I would like to have this debate in the most simple way. We could really have a dialogue among us, overcoming also possible barriers related to our background. So Ravi, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Alexandra. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, wherever you are. I'm in Melbourne, it's late night for me, and I'm enjoying this participation. First of all, before I give my views, I would like to thank GFAR profusely for this collective action in which we were involved. And while thanking GFAR, I equally thank Biodiversity International, Crop for Future, and all my Asia partners, Asia Farmers Association, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, ICRISAC, and International Center of Biosaline Agriculture, who had been actively involved along with us, and then also to Farah and to Arinina to really help us make this collective action really collective. Now, what I would like to say, about 7 months back, when we were contacted by GFAR to organize a webinar as a collective action on forgotten food. We had a series of meetings, and what we felt in the Asian partnership, we had a couple of meetings almost every 2 weeks. What we felt that collective action at the regional organization and national institution level probably is not enough. We need to have collective action at the grassroots level also to really make it more meaningful. That is how we came to the idea of having a survey questionnaire, which our partners, Asian Farmers Association, very good farmers organization, and Swaminathan Research Foundation, one of the finest NGO I have seen in my lifetime. I think they took it up on a war footing and reached to the farmers. And with more than 4,000 farmers' voice coming, we got a farmers' declaration, which I think is a unique selling point of the regional manifesto, and which is now a part of the global manifesto. and we are proud of that contribution. Having said that, I have to speak on the paradigm shift. Now, before I come to the paradigm shift, I see very clearly now we have a wish list of the collective actions to be done further in our Global Manifesto, which has shaped quite well and being fine-tuned. Then we have our unique selling point, as I just mentioned, and we have a clarity on research and innovation to be in a participatory mode through a very intense integration of community knowledge with the scientific knowledge. We have agreed to all these basic principles. But here I'm being asked to speak on the key issues that stems from the Global Manifesto. So now we have diagnosed the whole areas which needs attention, and we have listed there. And the key issues, when I was thinking of the key issues, I tried to break it into 3 steps. Number 1, how are we going to next step? Number 2, what are the challenges ahead? And number 3, how can we mitigate those challenges? So in a very simple language, how we are going to the next step, it has been agreed upon. We'll have a global plan of action. And before that, we will have community or practices to really make sure that we are moving in the right direction. But here I would like to say, there are 4 points which will need our attention. Those are like the points which are very crucial in the strategic plan which we will make, what we will call the global plan of action. The first point here, I would say, will be of the partnerships. How we identify the partners. Partnership is very crucial for any collective action. When I say partnership, I mean partnership at the local level also. It is not like with big institutions and big research organizations and all. Secondly, the point which I said is very important, knowledge integration of the community and the scientific knowledge. And third point, which is very, very crucial for any things to happen properly, is the resource mobilization. And here I mean financial resources. Because manpower resources we might get through partnerships, but financial resource mobilization is going to be very crucial. And then another important point in the next step is how we undertake a few pilot projects through the support of GFAR or any global organization or regional organization, how we pilot some of the ideas we have captured as a proof of concept, and not to start doing in a big way, but start a few pilots across the continent, or various continents, and then see in a year or 2 how we scale up. So we need to have a clear pathway roadmap for 5 to 10 years based on how we make our global plan of action. Now, what are the challenges ahead in this next step? When I look at the challenges from my Asian angle or with my own experience, I find 3 challenges of the many challenges which are there in our routine life and working. And the first challenge is collective action at the local level. Everything is about collective action. And this is what Rafael mentioned in the beginning, like how important is this? And this is what our new executive secretary, GFAR, she further stressed. How important is collective action? My point is collective action at the local level. Local level is so important, the kind of bureaucracy, the kind of cultural context, the kind of rigid thinking, the kind of diversity of people and administration involved is not as simple as it may look on the paper when we work on it. So to make it happen, this is number 1 challenge. We have faced it in many other projects, That is why I'm trying to bring this similar kind of experience here. Second challenge of collective action at the local level will be an enabling environment where you need a lot of a top-down approach. Though we are based on a bottom-up approach, which is perfect. Research, innovation with farmers, co-learning, co-innovation. But to make it happen now, I am quite clear it has to be top-down approach. Policymakers, all these people, the top guns, the heads of research institutions, National Agriculture Research System, they all need to be mobilized, channelized, sensitized to make sure that we all are on the same page to what we really want as a bottom-up approach for our forgotten food agenda to happen. And the third challenge, I think, is we need to get the buy-in both from the producer and the consumer. For producer, our survey has shown, yes, they very much want, and Irish from Asian Farmer Association may give you some analysis of what more than 90% farmers really want such traditional knowledge, traditional food to come back in this survey. So what we need is a local consumer level survey where we want a clarity of the awareness generation. This is equally important. So 3 challenges: collective action at the local level, enabling environment at the local level, and awareness generation at the local level, even at the consumer, on the consumer front. So having said that, I was thinking of few ways of how we can mitigate the challenges. And here for mitigation, again, I came out with 3 big points. 3 big points which I think needs serious attention. Number 1, a clear communication strategy. I have been talking of it in previous meetings, which is, I think, number 1 approach, how we communicate through social media and local means of communication at the grassroots level, to the civil society, to the policy, everyone. We use all the means of communication which are available nowadays. And secondly, how we can go for mitigation of challenges is by proper documentation of the integrated knowledge, which I have been talking as one of the important points we all have agreed upon. So how we document that scientific and the community knowledge, I think will show our strength to the people by using our proper communication strategy. And finally, I would say for mitigation, we need to focus on the functional capacities. Enough information is available globally on technical capacities, agronomic practice, and a lot of things are available. The functional capacities to navigate complexities, to strengthen all the policy making side, and to use it in the sense that people can really make the technical capacity they have to make things happen. So this is where I would like to say that this forgotten food agenda today is a translation of the principles of tropical agriculture platform of FAO, which is a G20 initiative. I'm quite actively involved there. I think this is an excellent example of the translation of the agriculture innovation system which they want to make. Through forgotten food, we are killing 2 birds with 1 stone. We are having a clear collective action of GFAR, and we are fulfilling the objectives of TAP, which wants to bring a change through innovation and is developing capacity to innovate. So we really need integration at the top level also on the certain principles and ideas to move forward. So with all this, I would like to finally say that we need to keep the momentum we have gained. We worked very hard last 7 months with our regional manifesto and with the global partners to achieve global manifesto. We have worked very hard. We need to now keep the momentum. We are flying very high, but we should be thinking of a proper landing We need to land also in a proper way so that we can make things happen. Over to you, Alexandra. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravi, for keeping also in the 10 minutes and for highlighting this connection between global and local, which is extremely important. I'll pass on the floor now to Yemi for the Forum of Agricultural Research in Africa. Please, Yemi, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Alessandro. I hope I'm allowed to share my screen because I would like to have the PowerPoint. Yes, I think. Is my screen visible? No.
Not yet, no.
Just 1 second, please. Is it visible now?
Yes, now it's visible.
Perfect. And apologies for that. So, and you can hear me correctly. So let me quickly run through what I have to share, which is a synopsis of, let me amend, which is a synopsis of the conversation that has happened on the African continent. And it's encapsulated in the essentials of the Africa's Manifesto on Forgotten Foods. So by way of background, we recognize that food and nutrition security remains a key developmental concern in the last decades. And Africa is, to say the least, extremely underserved when it comes to food and nutrition security. So 20% of the 1.2 billion people that are in the sub-Saharan African geography were undernourished by 2018. And Africa still has the largest proportion of undernourished people, followed by Asia, where about 11.7 of the 4.4 billion population still face hunger. The implication of these can be very dire on Africa's posterity, considering the effects of a balanced nutrition on the child, and especially thinking about the future, especially for the well-being in the first 2,000 days of life. So, increasing agricultural productivity, the provision of nutrient-balanced new foods, as well as coherent efforts to reduce poverty are top development agenda items. Then we come to the subject of forgotten foods. For us, forgotten food is synonymous to the neglected and underutilized species, or the indigenous foods, or the orphan crops, or what some people call the future foods. What are their attributes? Number one is that they have immense cultural human significance. And number two is that they provide nutritious and healthy food options. Number three is that they are extremely resilient to climate change because they have evolved with nature, and they are equally extremely adapted to the environment within which they exist. So, what is the form or the nature of the neglect that we're looking at? They are almost at every point in their natural state, not genetically improved, no research. They have been under-resourced and underutilized in the context of the global food system, so they are not in the big five, and their knowledge is largely disregarded or underestimated. The declined use is also due to the negative social perceptions and the pervasive impacts of policies that are skewed against these forgotten or underutilized foods, which ultimately play out in the lack of interest for researchers because they are not high on the demand. So we are now trying to reawaken the attention on the forgotten foods commodities that offers us a good chance to foster a paradigm shift in our food commodities. So when we look at the basket of foods in an average woman's kitchen, a family kitchen in Africa, the idea is to see how we can broaden the array of foods in that basket using what has been classified as forgotten. We have over 101 indigenous food commodities that are already identified as forgotten foods. Their nutritional values are known to be far higher, and I dare add that cultural values are also very, very important. They adapt better to the African climate, and that is the natural resource for the African domain, requiring very minimal agricultural inputs. So these commodities are otherwise known as the orphan crops, as they lack some degree of research attention. So what are the origins of these forgotten foods that are cultivated in Africa? So this slide is just to show that Africa is the center of origin of almost half of what has been termed forgotten. And I can explain why this is also that high in Africa. It is largely because the quantum of science in the production system of Africa is the least in all the continents. So it is not surprising that it is then inversely proportional that we have the highest forgotten foods. So when we got into this whole conversation, the global process that started, when you look, it started from the continental fora, the Apari, Para, Kakari, Arinena, Foragro. All of these independent, or rather the continental fora had their own independent consultations. And all of these independent or continental bodies then have their reports synthesized into the Global Manifesto. So what I'm speaking to is the African, if you like, the African dimension, or through the African lens of the Global Manifesto that will ultimately end up in the UN Food System Summit. How did we come up with the African dimension? Number one, the African Agricultural Research for Development space is underpinned by what we call the SROs, the sub-regional organizations. And we have 4 of them. That is the CORAF in the west, that's CADESA in the south, and that's ASARECA in the east. And we have the AFAS, the African Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services. And all of these are underpinned by the National Agricultural Research Institutes, the NGO consortium, the civil society organization, private sector, and International Agricultural Research Center. So on one hand, we have a basket of very, very strong, a lot of stakeholders that are dealing with us. Excuse me.
Jimmy, you have another couple of minutes if you want to keep with the time. Thanks.
Okay, so we had the working paper that was developed, and we also garnered the D groups to be able to have a reflection from across the continent, from all the stakeholders. And we had 2 webinars, and then we came up with the African Manifesto, and then we reverted to the community of practice for the validation, and that was the process that we had gone through. So in the manifesto, we have 5 pillars for Africa. So the first is the establishment of a dedicated and functional research and innovation system that should be looking at the development, holistic development for forgotten foods. The second is to build an appropriate innovation capacity at local level to enable the research and education institutions to develop solutions for increased productivity. And the third is to establish the partnerships that will foster the engagement of youth, women, and rapid integration of forgotten foods into the national food systems. And fourth is to facilitate the engagement of the private sector. And the last is to create a regional pool of financial resources that can support research of coherent development efforts on forgotten foods. So the action plan and way forward, in conclusion, is one, to raise awareness for recognizing these forgotten foods, to create a novel research program and networking, and create a participatory plant breeding program, develop sustainable seed systems, both for plants and animals and fish. We've received this kind of sentiments. And then promote the collection of conservation of their genes, develop the specialized capacity of development instruments with the national agricultural research systems, facilitate market access, encourage advocacy, introduce knowledge on forgotten foods to teaching modules, and then encourage advocacy, adopt new metrics and indications to show the value of these forgotten foods, fund and resource mobilization for investments on forgotten foods. Next action will be to set up the food desk at the FARA Secretariat, set up the community of practice, develop this coherent action as listed here, and then we go into the restructuring of the African research and innovation. So forgotten foods will constitute the bedrock of the diversity in traditional and indigenous food systems. It is imperative to collect the documents and local knowledge. This information should be useful for both product development and awareness raising. We must shape the food system to deliver safe, affordable, and nutrition diets. The time for action, forgotten food in Africa, is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yemi, for walking us through the process of the manifesto development and also very much its content. I will call now upon the representative of Arinena. I don't know if Ali is here or Adil will speak on his behalf.
I will be. I think is Dr. Adil joined us or not? I think he's not. So I will be. I will be give a briefing if Dr. Ali is not here, because Dr. Ali was supposed to talk on behalf of Arinena, and he wasn't prepared for that. So he sent an email that he got an emergency situation. So
excuse me, I see a user called Arinena.
Well, this is my office. It's actually not. This is just our office.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, this is my secretary from our office. Okay.
Yes,
so,
thanks. Sorry. Just,
okay. First of all, I'd like to.
Sorry, Yemi, could you mute yourself, please? Could you mute yourself if you can? Thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for the great efforts you have been putting in the manifesto. And as you know, Arinena, since the beginning, we actually made a lot of efforts where we had meetings with members, with experts, with people who are involved in these directions until we reached the situation now with you. So as you know, Arinena, we have members in 27 different countries, and usually we are connected with the National Agriculture Research Centers. So researchers everywhere, they are involved with us, and also we are involved with the policymakers in those different areas where we should actually put some effort in our plan of action in order to get to the policymakers, because policymakers would be the hand to help us in order to get things done in the right direction, especially in the NENA region. So we would be very interested now in partnership to actually get things in the plan of action done the right way. we will get involvement with youth and women in this case. But I would say that here also with the plan of action, we should find some way of seed money to start some of the work at the very beginning, because the awareness program would be a very important issue at this time. We have to get the message to all the policymakers, all the people in the right manner when we are doing this kind of work. At our side in Arenina, actually, we are doing a lot of work in networking, and now we are also involved with platforms. So I would say here that we have already a network for forgotten food and neglected crops in Arenina, where we are getting people involved from the whole Nina region, from these NARCs, from the colleges of agriculture, the research institutions involved with us in that. But at the same time, also, we would get to upgrade this network to a platform where it would work much better to connect researchers with the stakeholders, with the NGOs, with all of these different people, because by the end we should get a platform for which is an interactive for those people at this at one side, and at the same time side to utilize the interest of the stakeholders in order to enhance actually the way of much more interest, much more investment in the neglected crops and the forgotten foods, and to get them back active to share in the food security, and also at the same time to go to the achievements of the SDGs, because now everybody is working in those innovative ways, in creativity ways, getting youth to get involved with these projects, getting women to get involved in these projects. And at the same time, we would like to focus a lot on the capacity building, not only on training, but also in getting people to get educational programs like master programs in this direction, in neglected crops and forgotten foods, to really get them back in the right manner. So at Arenina side, I'm sure Dr. Adel, if he is there here, he would say more than what I have said. But as the plan of action, we start working with the plan of action, we will be hand in hand working with you in order really to get a lot of these things covered to achieve our goals in the Nina region, and also to be part of the Global Manifesto in forgotten food and neglected crops. Thank you so much. You are muted, Alessandro, you are muted.
Thank you very much for this intervention, and thank you for highlighting the birth of this new network of forgotten food, which will evolve into a platform, which is something very important in your area. I will pass on the floor now to Irish from the Asian Farmer Association to give us the farmer's perspective on the implication that farmers had in this manifesto making. Thank you very much. Irish, to you.
Yes, thank you, Alessandro. And again, good afternoon and good evening to everyone in Asia, and greetings from the Asian Farmers Association. And I can see in the group that the partners of AFA are also here. So I am representing the AFA members and partners. And AFA members is composed of around 13 million small-scale women and men producers engaged in crops, livestock, fisheries, forestry, herding, and pastoralism. So today, we are grateful that we have been given the opportunity again to present the result of a survey that we have done in Asia Pacific from March to May of this year with around 3,087 farmers. And it was done also in partnership with MSSRF. And again, we did this in 19 countries, and we are again grateful for the resources that has enabled us to be able to consolidate the voices of the farmers in Asia Pacific. So we did the survey using some online tools, and we co-created the questions with the collective action partners in Asia Pacific. And the result of the survey was translated into a farmer's declaration that I will be sharing in the chat later. In the next slide, you can see where the respondents came from, the 3,087 respondents. I wanted to highlight the process because it is essential to us. And as you can see, it involved a 6-step process, from joint designing of the question, translation of the questionnaire. Again, thank you for allowing us, because if we have been in many of the processes in the past, and without us translating questionnaires and even webinars, if there are no translation options or interpretation options, then this limits the participation, meaningful participation of farmers. So this process allowed the farmers' perspective to be considered in developing the framework, which is the regional manifesto, and now the global manifesto, and later on the global plan of action. And at the same time, the process builds the capacity of AFA as a regional network of farmers organization, but not just AFA at the region, but it also built the capacity of our members at the national level and also our partners. Moreover, the survey also allowed us, or has initiated the discussion among ourselves, among our members and partners. So in a way, it was an educational mechanism, again, not just for the farmers, but also among the National Farmers Organization Secretariat staff. So the result and the recommendation that we have generated will hopefully enrich the current initiatives and the ongoing discussion on forgotten food and underutilized species. So just some details, we were able to reach 30 female farmers, and the age group of 48% of the farmers belong to the age group 41 to 60 years old. And most of the farmers practice rain-fed agriculture and also mixed farming, as you can see on the screen. And then most of the farmers belong to what we call the small-scale farmers. They have up to 2 hectares of land. So this is the percentage of the farmers who are cultivating traditional crops. So 91% of the 3,087. Also, we have generated data on the crops.
Excuse me, Irish. Could I ask for the participants to mute themselves, please, to close the microphone? Thank you.
And then the convener will take the lead.
Please mute your microphone, please.
Yeah, can I ask the co-host or host to please unmute the participants that are not muted? So we have also massive data on the types of crops, and we have seek the support of MSSRF to help us analyze and clean the data on the types of traditional crops or indigenous crops that the farmers are growing. So there is a small percentage of farmers who are no longer cultivating forgotten crops or indigenous crops, and these are the reasons that they have provided. As you can see there, most of them have identified that these crops are not profitable, has low demand, low productivity, and there are also responses related to the promotion of the major crops. And then here, this confirms that the farmers rely on their own knowledge to continue producing traditional food crops. And here in the next slide, you can see that most farmers have identified marketing and seed system as the limitation for their continued production of forgotten crops. And in these slides, most of the farmers again get support from their fellow farmers, and usually from the sharing of knowledge, informal sharing of knowledge, and also sharing of seeds. And then in slides, and the succeeding slides, I will not go through them in detail, but here you will have an idea of the innovations that farmers have introduced using, again, tacit knowledge or inherited knowledge, or knowledge from their own or from their fellow farmers. So the responses here came from an open-ended questions when asked about the innovations that they have been doing. So you see that there are innovations from the production up to the marketing. I will not go through these, but I just wanted to highlight that there are existing initiatives of our partners and also farmer organization members in different parts of Asia Pacific, and these are good initiatives that this collective action initiative can build on and can also learn from. So the next slides that I will be showing are the support that the farmers are requesting from the different resource institutions and of course from the government. So here we have clustered the support that are being asked for the farmers to continue innovating and continue producing traditional food crops. And again, the responses were from an open-ended question. So here they have identified support at the policy level. They also mentioned support needed in terms of educating and making the consumers aware of the health value of traditional food crops. And there's also the demand for, as you have as mentioned earlier, a different type of research that recognizes farmers not just as a recipient of knowledge or technology, but also as an actor in developing technology or innovation. And also there are support needed in terms of access to finance, also support in terms of technology, and also of course capacity building. We also asked the farmers using pre-selected questions, and these are the results. So as you can see, most farmers tick on marketing and the seed production, seed distribution, or availability of good quality seeds as something that they need to continue cultivating these crops. And then they have identified the following agencies as the agencies or institutions they see as who can provide them those needed support. So when asked this question, will you start or continue to cultivate traditional food crops given or with the above support? So 90% has confirmed their commitment to continue to innovate and continue to produce traditional healthy food crops or nutritious crops for the public. And I will not go through these again, but I just wanted to show that these are additional information on from the farmers on how to scale out the cultivation or the innovation using forgotten food. So in summary, this I think are my ending slides. In summary, our survey also confirmed that a farmer continue to nurture and benefit from the traditional food crops, and they have been relying on their own knowledge and again from their fellow farmers knowledge, and they bank on this knowledge that they have to grow, consume, and sell traditional indigenous food crops. So I think the result of what we have done would underscore the value of starting from where the farmers are and building on what they already have and have been innovating on. However, we also recognize that there is this multitude of knowledge from the research institutions, from the NGO sector as well. So we are posing this question: how can the collective action bring the synergy, or how can it facilitate so that these sources of knowledge can actually reinforce each other? And then we call on our collective action partners to support the environment so that farmers can continue to innovate and experiment at the farm level. So these are the demands. So create supportive programs and policies, support the creation of economic opportunities for this food, and also support the awareness raising and nutrition education of consumer. And also we ask the collective action partners to recognize the farmers' experiences and initiative, and employ joint studies or joint research from not just in the production side, but actually until the marketing. So we see the challenges or the support needed as opportunities for the collective action partners and farmers to come together and identify actions and form an empowering partnership. These are also our calls, and they are included in the Farmers Declaration that I will be sharing with you. We call on our partners to again create that enabling environment for innovation with the farmers. I wanted to highlight also these 3 points. So we hope that this collective action partner will actually foster the recognition of farmers' organizations and cooperatives and their capacities to produce knowledge and represent farmers in policy processes, so they can provide better services, not just to their members, but also to both the rural and urban communities. And we also hope, based on what we have learned in the past, that when farmer organizations are invited or are included as part of the steering committee or advisory committee of big programs or research programs, then there is the possibility that the farmers' agenda are actually included in the plan. So at the moment, AFA is part of the steering committee of a number of big global programs, but also at the national level. And we have seen positive outcomes in setting the agenda. And of course, we call on everyone to support and promote later on the localization of the manifesto and the action plan, because this is what is meaningful to the farmers at the local level. I just wanted to, in closing, I wanted to highlight these 3 statements from the Farmers Declaration. So as farmers organizations and cooperatives of family farmers and civil society in Asia Pacific, we articulate our commitment to help in the massive promotion of indigenous, traditional, and local crops. And we are also committed through our organization to conduct awareness raising among our members to increase their motivation to cultivate indigenous crops, strengthen the capacities of our women members, and encourage our youth members to get fully involved in the full value chain of indigenous crops, from seed production to the intervention at the policy level. And where there exists, we will facilitate partnership with government, research institutions, CSOs, and development partners to improve sustainable production, processing, and marketing of indigenous food crops. We will conduct a learning exchanges and knowledge management workshop documenting our experience, capturing lessons learned from these experiences. So again, I would like to thank all our partners, even the non-AFA members who took part in the survey. Also, I wanted to recognize the constituency of MSSRF. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Irish, for walking us through the survey exercise and showing how much it was important, not only for the results it's brought, for the knowledge it brought, but also, as you said, for creating a form of education, mutual education and awareness raising exercise with your own group. I would then pass on the floor now to Carlo Fadda for the Alliance of Biodiversity and SIAT. Please, Carlo.
Thanks a lot. Let me also share the screen. I have a PowerPoint, and I'm going to present the case study that we did at the Alliance on why forgotten foods are important and how we did the study. As it was mentioned on several occasions, this is really to figure out whether it's possible to conceive a manifesto with a different way of doing research. And I strongly believe, as a scientist working for the Alliance of Biodiversity and SIAT, that it's really essential. But let me quickly go through the challenges and why forgotten foods are important and why they are also an important part in the conversation around Food System Summit, where agrobiodiversity plays an important role in many of the action tracks. I believe, and I will just go quickly through it, that there are 4 major crises that are directly linked to agriculture. One is a malnutrition crisis. It was mentioned many times during this meeting, or it was implied in where the forgotten food offer an important part to the malnutrition. To go to the number, there are 2 billion people that suffer from micronutrient deficiencies, and more that are obese, or they face from they have non-transmissible disease that are linked to wrong diets. A second one is the biodiversity crisis. We use very little of the agrobiodiversity that we could use. Our production system are such that they are one of the major cause of loss of biodiversity, to the point that we call this time as the time where the 6th mass extinction is taking place. So not only we don't use the biodiversity we have to improve our nutrition, but also we get rid, or we contribute as practitioners in agriculture to the loss wild biodiversity, which is important, of course, to provide ecosystem services. We have a climate crisis, and again, agriculture is responsible for an important part of the greenhouse gas emission, according to certain estimates. When you look into the single contribution of the climate crisis, agriculture is from farm to fork is the major responsible of it. And then the land degradation, which again, unsustainable agricultural practices leads to land degradation. At the moment, a quarter of the world's agricultural land area has been degraded, and it is estimated that this will raise up to 95% if things are not changed by 2050. So we need to make our agricultural practices more sustainable, and we've listened from the previous speaker that a lot of the work, or the way the farmers practice when they grow forgotten food or forgotten crops, it's also linked to sustainable agricultural practices, crop rotation and multi-crop system. When we talk about major crop production, we see that wheat, maize, rice, soybean cultivated on 50% of global agricultural land. So a lot of the other, what we call it, the long tail of neglected species or forgotten food occupy the remaining 50%. So there is a very big role to diversify production system out of those 4 major crops. And why forgotten crops are important? That's because the preservation and diversification of culturally relevant nutritional sources, supporting and being a key part of healthy diets by being diverse and nutritionally rich. We've heard this from the various contributors today. The fostering a climate change resilient food system by integrating traditional risk management practices born out of need to adapt to adverse weather conditions. They empower indigenous communities, women and youth to leverage their knowledge and generate income, and their potential is largely unknown because they've not been studied. And so they have a huge potential to improve their performance through better management and selection. In other words, there is scope and room to actually work on crop improvement if there is greater investment on those crops. Yet, this requires participatory methodology. These crops have been neglected by research. Most of the knowledge around them is held by farmers. Farmers know a lot about nutritional properties, adaptation to certain environmental conditions, including soil types that are required for each of the crop, and biotic and abiotic stresses, and of course, in addition to the cultural and religious uses, food growth, etc. So it's really important that that the farmers are taken into account, because if we have to start a new research program on forgotten foods, it will take a lot of time before this program can be operationalized, and that's because we don't have the knowledge yet before the research can generate the necessary knowledge to understand how they adapt the nutrition, etc. It can take probably 10 to 15 years, and we don't have the time. The crisis that I was describing before requires a quick answer, and so we cannot wait until the research can complete its part. So that's, for example, is a result of a stress-tolerant portfolio which has been developed with farmers. So first you go out, you make a biodiversity assessment, you develop what are the major crops in a production system, and then you map each of the crops around the type of crops that you have. So you have maize, sorghum, fonio per millet that are drought resistant. You have pulses like Bambara groundnut and cowpea. This is a project in West Africa. The vegetables, then fruits, and for each of them, the farmers are able to provide the information that is required for different types of stress. So this doesn't come from research, but it's a great point. It's a great starting point to have this information also for developing a strategy with the farmers, to co-design a strategy with the farmers on how to use this diversity. So for sustainable production system, forgotten food are important because they unleash high nutrition value, they fight persistent poverty in remote regions, they build resilience to climate change, they counter soil depletion and create more sustainable farm system. So in other words, they adapt to, they contribute to reducing the 4 major crises that we have seen before. So let me now go to the case study. This is in Kenya, where in one of the, in a Kenya county, and it's part of a project that is called Biodiversity for Food and Nutrition. Here are just some statistics about Kenya and why it's important to address this nutrition part. 26% of the children under 5 are stunted. 61.4%, 27.2% of women between age between 15 and 49 years suffer for anemia. So again, micronutrient deficiency. At the same time, 60% of female adolescents are overweight. So that shows a shift. And you can see the other statistics, but that's just to say that nutrition is really a very important part of it's an important topic that needs to be addressed. This is done in Western Kenya in a county called Busia, which is in the Lake Victoria region and it's next to Uganda. So here, for example, is one of the work that we've been doing, promoting intercropping. You can see traditional vegetables grown alongside with maize. And here are some of the African indigenous vegetables that we used in the project. So we have amaranthus, nightshade, solanum, vigna. We have many. This is just a subsection. We've been actually working with 15 of them. And the benefits of the indigenous biodiversity species, that's again, it's derived from the work with the farmers. So they are affordable because they can be harvested either in the wild or they can be cultivated by smallholder farmers and sold at a reasonable price. It doesn't cost much to produce them, and they can be grown in different seasons. They are nutritious. They are typically high in micronutrients, contributing to a healthy, balanced diet. In the full portfolio, we also explore, in the full analysis, we also explore their characteristics as medicinal, their medicinal properties of these species. They are acceptable because they are connected to traditional medical, cultural knowledge and heritage. So farmers are really eager to work on these species. It's not different from what we've learned before on the Asian farmers. The farmers are eager to work on it. They are eager to see the value of their traditional crops to be recognized. They're locally adapted crops that can resist pest, drought, and climate change. Now, again, I reiterated that this information comes from the farmers. When we go into the science, we want to validate that information. So for example, we learned that amaranth is 35 times richer than one of the crop that is a vegetable that is mostly promoted in East Africa, which is cabbage. So if you are concerned about nutrition and each of the traditional leafy vegetable, the Ethiopian kale, the spinach, spider plant, jute mallow, etc., they are all far richer in vitamin A than cabbage, which is much more broadly promoted. And similarly, all of these traditional vegetables are far richer in iron as well. The richest one is the Malabar spinach, which is 13 times richer in iron than cabbage. And we have seen that anemia is a very serious issue with women in Kenya. So that is now how the power of linking the traditional knowledge with research can really strengthen that evidence. So the farmers told us they're very nutritious, we check, we verify, and it's actually confirmed, and we can even identify which one would contribute better to address vitamin A deficiencies or iron deficiencies. In addition, nutrition is also a seasonal aspect. So we know that some food, the farmers can face time of food insecurity. Now, one of the good things of the traditional leafy vegetable is that somehow they are available all year round. Some are available in certain periods of time. And again, this is comes with the farmer's knowledge. The farmers will tell us when these vegetables are available, and so we know in which time of the year they are consumed, and we can design diets that are actually linked to this seasonal calendar. They can be used to develop recipes, to promote healthy food, healthy meals using these traditional foods, and to provide a kind of whole of diet approach where you can use the major staple food in conjunction with some of these traditional vegetables. So we produce a book that will tell us linking again some of the traditional use of the foods with the knowledge of the fact that we want to maximize the delivery of micronutrients that are important to address this malnutrition. And then there is the marketing. Again, African farmers are not different from the Asian ones. They want to have linkage to the market, and one of the reasons why they're not growing more this traditional food is because of the weak link to the markets. So here we train 25 farmer groups on processing, handling, marketing, and financial business management. We wanted them to become entrepreneur in a way. We want to stimulate and contribute to develop small and medium enterprises with this group. And one of the key linkage is with public institutions, for example, schools and hospitals in feeding programs. So we made we helped farmers to create linkage with schools and hospitals to purchase African leafy vegetable. This is win-win. One is creating the market for the farmers, but also to improve the nutrition of school children and people in hospital, which will probably need a good diet. We contribute to develop 23 business plans by participating farmers, and we have students eating indigenous vegetables meals 5 times per week in a village called Mundika. So the students become aware of the importance of eating vegetables, and particularly of the importance of eating these traditional vegetables. And in associated schools, so not directly linked to the project, an additional 5,500 students are estimated to receive healthy meals. And so these create $540 annual profit for the farmers, and an additional 360 estimated annual savings for schools, because the schools not only are now able to provide healthier diets, healthier food, but they're also able to save some money because these vegetables are a little bit cheaper.
Carlo, if you could conclude, because we need to open the debate as soon as possible.
Yeah, two more slides, yeah. And then there is the policy dimension. The Busia County, because of this work, was the first one to develop a biodiversity strategy and the biodiversity policy. They make specific provision for building farmer capacity to conserve, grow, and market indigenous biodiversity. So they recognize the need of farmers to have access to markets, and it offers a reference point to other counties and regions to develop similar policies. So it was a key. This is a key result because it goes in the direction that was indicated before by Irish. So working with farmers is essential to gain knowledge on forgotten foods rapidly. They play an essential role in co-developing solutions. We need to be based on farmers' knowledge because farmers' knowledge is what we have. Otherwise, we are in ignorance, and as we know, science takes time. Farmers are critical also for adopting innovations, because if they are part of developing, co-developing that innovation, they know what to expect. They don't need to waste time to test it and try it, but they are ready to adopt. And we know from other studies that adoption when innovations are co-developed is much higher. And so the investment into developing those innovations pays off several times. It is important to ensure that researchers are equipped with the tools to work in a participatory way. That is a little bit of a constraint, particularly in some cases, national agricultural research system, and now I'm not talking specifically about the case study in Kenya, it's more a general consideration. They tend to be reluctant to work in a participatory way. And so it's important that an incentive mechanism and the motivation is actually put in place to ensure that the farmers can work with the farmers. The scientists can work with the farmers, and scientists, when scientists work with the farmers, for example, in the context of a project like this, they actually get interested in the participatory way. But again, what is needed is not to have individual farmers being interested, but it's important that this is institutionalized and that global, national and regional research organization develop a mechanism to ensure that participatory research becomes more mainstream. Thank you. And sorry, Alessandro, if we took a couple of minutes.
It's okay, Carlo. Thanks a lot. I'll take away from my time so we can open the debate, and then we'll have an attempt of a conclusion from my side. I would like to open the debate by giving the floor to start with, only to start with, to Syed, if you are there, and Crops for the Future was also one of our partners of the action. If you could, Syed, as briefly as possible, so as to allow time also to other partners to come in. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Alessandro, and congratulations to everybody for the depth and breadth of this achievement today. But I just wanted to pick up an issue which we haven't really focused on, which is really the elephant in the room, climate change, and everything we're dealing with. And if we start with Ravi talking about a war footing, Yemi talking about time for action is now, it illustrates the urgency of what we have to do. We've got 9 years if we're going to achieve sustainable development goals. And my point, which I'd really want to make, is 7.8 billion people will become 10 billion people. The planet will be 3.5 degrees hotter. And if we think the 4 crops that now feed us will be sufficient, we better be sure of that, because we have excluded essentially this whole range of underutilized crops that we're discussing today. So for policymakers, for people outside this virtual room, we have to look at arguing with them and telling them that they have to be sure that business as usual is going to be sufficient. What I want to really illustrate is that malnourishment, and this was really picked up by a number of speakers, there are more malnourished people than well-nourished people on the planet, and this issue is going to become the real issue that we will have to face in the future. Not the number of people who are food secure, but the number of people who are malnourished. And if Hildegard's point, which was, how do we put all of this together in an overarching statement? I would propose that we look at SDG 2, which talks about achieving food security and improved nutrition, not improved nutrition, but improved. Now that means we have to achieve by 2030 better nutrition for large numbers of people, because we have to achieve the global SDGs by 2030. There's a point which people have said many times about knowledge. And what I suggest is that we have to look for evidence. Knowledge is based on evidence. And without evidence, we are not in a position to actually integrate knowledge. And this really takes me to the other, I'm sorry, that's the cockerel in the background in our garden, but the other issue I want to raise is knowledge and evidence are part of the other collective action that GFAR is actually committed to, which is digital agriculture. And here we have an opportunity for new technologies, for different players, for younger people to get involved through digital systems in which evidence can actually be shared and made available to as many people as possible. So my concluding point really is that I think if we pick SDG 2.1 and improve nutrition, it doesn't answer all of the issues of forgotten foods, but it actually gives us a direction in which we can prioritize where we actually want to make the biggest impact as soon as possible, because the urgency is clearly, it's clear to us, and it has to become clear to wider communities that nutrition now is actually the biggest challenge that humanity faces in the future climates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Syed. Oliver King, could you briefly come in just for a minute?
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Alexandro.
From Swaminathan Research Foundation.
Can you hear me, Alexandro?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So it is very interesting indeed. The presentations today. I get the signal that we are moving forward from the point of view of how the forgotten crops and foods can be leveraged in the context of addressing nutrition poverty, and also to some extent how the local communities can be enabled in terms of climate adaptation and strengthening the community rights. These three key dimensions are actually emerging up. But to be very realistic, when we have implemented in the last 20 years, the Swaminathan Foundation in India, in collaboration with different constituency partners, there are 4 critical actions are essential to move forward. One is, we all agree that there are the critical stakeholders, particularly the poorest of the poor, the tribes and the marginal communities, rain-fed agriculturists. They are the key person and they contribute in terms of knowledge. Their knowledge is actually used by, or there are catalytic efforts by the FPOs and the CBOs and the NGOs. They are happening in silos. In India, if you see that, it is happening in silos, but there is a need for a kind of a collective action where we are actually currently handling with the support of partners. This is a kind of a momentum possibly is very much required, kind of grassroots workers coming together, those who are working on forgotten crops and foods, and their community of practices needs to be documented and needs to be mainstream with the national agricultural systems. The second aspect I wanted to really point out is that what is the kind of approach they want? When they say the community they want. In our surveys also it is very clear there are critical actions in 4 corners, like conservation, cultivation, consumption, and commerce. We call it as a 4C approach. Thanks to Biodiversity International and others, we have done a lot of work on these dimensions too in the past. So such an integrated approach, aligning with different stakeholders and partners, particularly private partners, partnership coming in, donors contribution coming in. There are local levels, there are efforts have actually given a kind of key deliverables. The third dimension I wanted to say is that where the platform, what we want, particularly the platform for action, where people can have a shared learning. This is a third dimension. Probably there is a need for government support system coming in or international support system coming in. So if we have these 3 aspects of it, more inclusive and also process oriented, a bottom-up approach, wherein main critical stakeholder in action, conservationists, R&D, policymakers, and also the donors. If they come together, I think we will definitely go forward in a great way. This will address, as Dr. Carlo pointed out, critical issues we will face it in terms of nutrition poverty and in terms of climate adaptation and strengthening local resilience, and also ensure community rights. Because we have law in the country. In case of India, we have Protection of Plant Variety and Farmers' Rights Act and Biodiversity Act in the country that can directly contribute to this kind of initiative. But still, in my opinion, it is still in a very small way. It is not. It has to come out. So all these actors need to come together with support from north to east. I stop here, Alexandro. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Let's start to the extent possible the discussion, and I see a hand raised by Saima Crofter. Please, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about. I am from Pakistan Crofter Foundation, and we are the partners with AFA. And we did this survey here actually with the farmers. We are the alliance of small farmers organizations here in Pakistan. And but actually I was I just sorted out from all these presentations, and the same thing and issues are here in Pakistan too with the farmers. But the most problematic thing is that the research institutes of agriculture, no research institute is researching on the forgotten foods, no on the traditional foods. They are focusing on the cash crops. They are introducing the seeds of cash crops and all these things. And also the government is not taking any serious steps to promote these foods, and they are only focusing the 3 or 4 the major crops which are going to be cultivated every year for the farmers. And there are also the, because of lot of farmers, they are growing the same crops, so it's creating problems for the farmers getting the rates in market, because some at 1 year the production is high, so they are not getting very good rate of all these crops here. So the next year, if their crop have been ruined by any disaster or something like this, so they are only relying on the one crop, so they have been they have nothing to eat for the whole year. And this issue have been very much facing by the small scale farmers here. And the nutrition values of these indigenous crops and forgotten foods, it's also should be highlighted on the larger scale here, because people, they don't know how much these foods are can give you the energy and what you can in Pakistan, wheat is the major crop, and then the next one is rice, and wheat they have been eaten on a larger scale there. But there are oats there, and then some other things which are they're like corn, oats, and but farmers are cultivating these crops, but they are just for their own use or just to be distributed in the local community. They are not doing it at the larger scale, and that's why farmers are facing a lot of problems here. And the big problem also, like we should also need to learn from these type of platforms here, like how we can facilitate to our farmers to promote these crops, and how we can engage with the government departments and government institutes, research institutes who can help out farmers to develop their indigenous crops, and they can get better marketing or something like this. So I just, there are a lot of other to share, but I just wanted to be brief. So until this now, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this intervention. I think, unfortunately, we have reached the limit of our time, which was an hour and a half. And I'm sorry that we have compressed, so to speak, the debate time. But I underline the fact that all the presentations will be made available to the participants on their own address once we collect them. And I would like now to pass to a tentative, an attempt of a synthesis of what was said. I have noted just a few points that will not cover everything, but that I hope will be significant for you. The first point that I think we can all agree upon is that this manifesto undertaking has raised awareness already. We were thinking in the action plan of a major activity regarding awareness raising, but the manifesto itself the process of the manifesto itself has raised awareness. And why am I saying this? Because we can see already in 2 out of 3 major networks that were involved, either a new forgotten food network is created, or we heard a desk of forgotten food is created, which means then the attention then has been raised on forgotten foods, and it has been done so in a global way, but also in a local way, because we have been working, as you heard, through many associations and many organizations that were partners of the regional networks. And this awareness has also had an educational effect. And we heard this word being used by AFA. So that's a first achievement that I think is important. A second element, which I heard in the presentations, and I hope you agree with me, is there is global agreement on the importance of forgotten foods. It has been mentioned in different ways. I won't go again into the different aspects of it. We talked about nutrition, climate change, and other aspects, but I see a convergence of agreement on how important these forgotten foods are, and we have statistics, and we have mentioned in the case of Africa of 101 forgotten foods. So we also have some quantitative elements which have been brought to the fore. A third point that I would like to make inevitably is the point on the importance of farmers' knowledge. But it's not enough to say that farmers' knowledge is important and is essential when it has to do with forgotten foods. I think it is important, and all speakers have, in a way or in another, directed their attention to this aspect. We need new types of partnerships. We need, the word was used, empowering partnerships. The word of co-development was used, co-research was used, more inclusive bottom-up research. And we talked about the need for incentives and what is, in a way, a professional change that needs to be carried out, so that we have a different type of researcher, a different type of development agents operating on the ground. In GFAR, we are keen about partnership principles, and we have a number of them which are extremely important for us, and they were applied in this research itself, from setting the agenda together, from sharing responsibilities, sharing benefits, strengthening mutual research capacities, sharing data, disseminating results. As you can see, these partnership principles were already applied in the collective action, and they will need to be applied in the future. And that's something GFAR supports very much. A fourth dimension that came out in the discussion is the areas of investment. I think there is a consensus, and the manifesto is bringing this consensus in much more detail, and we will share the manifesto with you on the areas we need to improve. And we heard the area of seeds production, seed selection, seed conservation. We heard the area of marketing being extremely important, new markets, but also new consumer awareness, new demands. And we heard the area of policy. And we could also mention the 4 C's that Oliver King has highlighted. And I will like to end with this 5th dimension, which is bringing us back to our first speaker, the link between global and local. I think this is something we will not need to forget. As we are proceeding now with the finalization of the manifesto, we will facilitate the emergence of a community of practices, which will be designated by the partners we worked with. So a group of persons, which is an open group, will start working on the implementation of the manifesto. And what we have in mind as next step is to hold a meeting in September, where this community of practices composed of 30, 40, or will deal with a limited but representative number of persons, will identify the best bets, which are the areas of the manifesto that need to be brought forward and how. And based on that meeting that we are going to facilitate in September, we will then have a meeting with the donors in which the community of practice will explain the way forward, and we will have the donors' reaction, which will hopefully be favorable, because we will again link local with global. So we will not have scattered activities which are de-organized from of investment that will start somewhere, because we need to start somewhere. This somewhere will be connected to a global whole, which is this manifesto, which is this framework, with this conceptual framework, but it has its feet on the ground, and as it's here on the ground, as we have been able to witness. So with this, in the QA, there was a question which I can leave you as a sort of provocation, because we won't be able to answer. But in terms of United Food System Summit, if there was a percentage of forgotten food that we're aiming to be increased in terms of produced and consumed to transform the food system, what would be that percentage? When can we expect that percentage to be achieved? That's just a provocation, a quantitative target that we could start thinking of in terms of also promise or horizon that we could give to the donors. So with this, I would like to really thank you very much, warmly thank you for all the energy you've put in this webinar, hoping that one day we'll be able to meet in face to face. And I will now conclude, thanking you again, and looking forward to developing further the manifesto with you, refining it, and then engaging in the plan of action. Thank you very much, and all the best to everybody.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, and everybody. It was a super exciting meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.